I'm not ashamed.
What was the cup that Jesus was about to drink of that James and John agreed to drink of as well? This is the question that we seek to answer today as we continue our verse-by-verse study of the book of Matthew on walking through the Bible.
The glory of his cross.
If you have a Bible with you, you can turn to Matthew chapter 20. We're going to be reading from verses 20 to 28. If you don't have a Bible, don't worry. Just follow along with us on the screen. The version that we'll be reading from is the New King James Version. So, Matthew chapter 20, beginning at verse 20. Then the mother of Zebedee's sons came to him with her sons, kneeling down and asking something from him. And he said to her, "What do you wish?" She said to him, "Grant that these 2 sons of mine may sit, one on your right hand and the other on your left, in your kingdom." But Jesus answered and said, "You do not know what you ask. Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" They said to him, "We are able." So he said to them, "You will indeed drink my cup, and be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. But to sit on my right hand and on my left is not mine to give, but it is for those for whom it is prepared by my Father." And when the 10 heard it, they were greatly displeased with the 2 brothers. But Jesus called them to himself and said, "You know that the rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who are great exercise authority over them. Yet it shall not be so among you, but whoever desires to become great among you, let him be your servant. And whoever desires to be first among you, let him be your slave. Just as the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." Back in chapter 18, the disciples were arguing amongst themselves as to who would be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. In that chapter, Jesus brought a little child to them and said that they must be converted and become like little children in humility, or they wouldn't even be in the kingdom of heaven. The lesson was that they should seek to be humble and not strive for their own position, for those that are humble are in actuality great in the kingdom of heaven. At the end of chapter 19, Peter asked Jesus what the disciples would receive for leaving all and following him, obviously expecting a great reward for being the first to follow Jesus. Jesus told them that the last will be first and the first will be last, illustrated by the parable of the laborers in the vineyard from earlier on in this chapter. So now coming down to verse 20 of chapter 20, we have the mother of James and John kneeling before Jesus and worshiping him before telling him that she wanted to ask him something. Like most mothers, she wanted her children to succeed and to be in the best position possible. So she came to Jesus and asked on behalf of her sons that they sit on the right hand and the left hand of Jesus in the kingdom. In Mark's account, it says that James and John asked Jesus for this, but Matthew tells us that the instrument they used was their mother. Children sometimes will ask their parents for things in this way, for when one child is afraid to ask their parents for something, they send one of their siblings whom the parent might say yes to in order to ask the question. That doesn't change the fact that the question was really the first child's question, even though it was being asked by one of their siblings. James and John were obviously afraid to ask Jesus this question directly, maybe out of fear of what Jesus would say or out of fear of what the other disciples would say. But at any rate, their mother asked Jesus on their behalf. Jesus didn't immediately say yes or no. He told them that they didn't know what they were asking for. First of all, they most likely thought that Jesus' kingdom was an earthly kingdom, and that meant they would be sitting next to a physical throne in Jerusalem. Jesus' throne is in heaven, as his kingdom is not of this world, so in that sense, James and John didn't understand. They also didn't understand the principle which makes people great in the kingdom, a principle of humility that Jesus had taught before. James and John were trying to get ahead at the other disciples' expense, something that should not be done. Even more, though, they misunderstood what being a part of Jesus' kingdom would entail. Being friends with the king brought with it prestige, but here on this earth, that's not how Jesus' disciples would be treated. Jesus asked James and John, "Are you able to drink the cup that I am about to drink of?" The cup here is a metaphor for affliction and punishment, something that was about to happen to Jesus in Jerusalem. The Jews would thus recognize that metaphor in this way. James and John said they were able to do that. The phrase about baptism is not present in many manuscripts of Matthew, but it is present in Mark's account, so we'll leave discussion of it until that time we study the book of Mark. With James and John answering in the affirmative, Jesus said that they will indeed drink the cup that I am about to drink of, meaning that these apostles would suffer much like Jesus did. James would be the first apostle martyred for Christ, while John would suffer banishment for the name of Christ. In truth, all of the disciples would suffer in some sort of way. It's just James and John were told specifically so here. Even though they would suffer, Jesus would not give them places at his right and left hand, for they were not places for him to give. Only the Father could do that. Now the other disciples were obviously displeased that James and John tried to elevate themselves. So Jesus calmed the situation down by again teaching them about greatness. In earthly kingdoms, kings lord their power over the people, but in his kingdom, such would not be so. Greatness in the kingdom would not be determined by official rank, but by service. Want to be great in the kingdom? Become a servant to others. Jesus exemplified this in that he is the king, yet he came to this earth to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. What a sacrifice that Jesus gave on our behalf, a sacrifice he gave because he loved us. Let's thus follow Jesus' example of service, and as Christians, seek to serve others in any way possible. With that, our time is up for today. The Lord willing, we hope you'll join us for tomorrow's discussion of Matthew 20, verses 29 to 34, as we continue our walk through the Bible, one verse at a time.
I'm not ashamed.
Thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you found it edifying and ask that you not only subscribe to our channel and podcast, but that you like and share this episode among your friends so that the saving gospel of Jesus Christ can go out to the whole world.
Of his cross.